Let's talk about something that many experts get wrong. And I'm not just talking about TV talking heads, but even the people running some of the most powerful countries in the world. There's a growing narrative that the rise of BRICS is part of a global tug-of-war, that nations joining BRICS are turning their backs on the West and throwing their lot in with China or Russia. That framing is not just wrong, it's outdated. It ignores the actual motivations driving countries, especially in Southeast Asia, to explore partnerships within BRICS. The reality is, this shift is not about choosing sides. It's about choosing sovereignty. Let's start with the basics. BRICS began as a modest 5-nation group: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. For a while, it was seen as little more than a symbolic alliance. An annual summit, some joint statements, and vague aspirations about changing the global system. The West largely dismissed it. Even within the bloc, there wasn't always a sense of urgency or unity. But something changed. Since 2024, BRICS has expanded rapidly. New members include Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the UAE. That's a serious shift. Together, the 10 BRICS nations now account for nearly 40% of global GDP by purchasing power, more than the G7's 30%. That number alone should make anyone stop and think. And one region that's leaning into this transformation is Southeast Asia. Indonesia officially joined in early 2024. Not long after, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam began participating as partner nations. They haven't gone all in with full membership yet, but the momentum is clear. These are deliberate strategic steps, not some impulsive pivot away from the West. So why now? Why is Southeast Asia engaging with BRICS in ways it never did before? The answer lies in two things: credibility and capacity. For years, BRICS lacked both, but that's changing. First, the credibility. The group is no longer a loose collection of countries with vague intentions. It's developing institutions that actually work. The new development bank, often called the BRICS Bank, is a functioning, well-funded institution that finances infrastructure and green energy across the global south. Countries like Malaysia and Thailand need those investments. But they're also increasingly cautious about relying solely on Western lenders like the IMF or World Bank, where conditionality often comes with political strings. The BRICS Bank offers an alternative, not to replace Western institutions, but to complement them. It gives countries leverage, options, and a chance to diversify their investment strategies. Importantly, it doesn't require them to align with any single great power. Then there's the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, or CRA. This is essentially a joint emergency fund that member countries can tap into during times of financial crisis. Whether that's a sudden currency crash, capital flight, or external shocks like sanctions or war. Think about that for a moment. For smaller or emerging economies, having access to a collective safety net like this could mean the difference between recovery and collapse. And crucially, the CRA is designed to provide this support without the political baggage of Western-led financial assistance. It's a tool for resilience in an unpredictable world. These two institutions, the BRICS Bank and the CRA, represent more than just economic programs. They are symbols of a maturing bloc. BRICS is no longer simply about philosophy. It's about functionality. And this is exactly why Southeast Asian nations are taking notice. Now, let's address the geopolitical elephant in the room. The idea that joining BRICS is an anti-Western move. That's simply not the case. This isn't about shifting from Washington to Beijing. In fact, countries like Vietnam and the Philippines have serious territorial disputes with China, especially in the South China Sea. They're not looking to give Beijing more influence. They're looking for more autonomy in a region increasingly defined by competition between the US and China. This brings us to a concept that more people should be paying attention to: cooperative multipolarity. What does that mean? It means working with multiple powers, economically, diplomatically, strategically. without being forced into a binary Cold War-style alignment. It means having choices. It means keeping your sovereignty intact. Southeast Asian nations are masters of this. For decades, they've balanced competing relationships through ASEAN, building consensus, avoiding confrontation, and staying neutral where possible. BRICS offers them another tool in that balancing act. It's not a replacement for Western ties, nor is it a surrender to Chinese influence. It's a hedge, a strategic buffer against the risks of over-reliance on any one power. Still, the move toward BRICS isn't without complications. There are concerns about China's outsized role in the bloc. Some nations fear that BRICS could become another platform for Beijing's regional ambitions. And let's be honest, China's actions in the South China Sea do little to ease those fears. That's why full ASEAN integration into BRICS is unlikely, at least in the near future. The bloc values its unity and neutrality too much to make a collective leap. But individual nations will, and should, continue to engage with BRICS based on their own strategic interests. There's also the issue of the United States. Under President Trump, the US has taken a confrontational stance toward BRICS, threatening tariffs and openly criticizing any effort to de-dollarize the global economy. During his last term, he slapped tariffs of up to 49% on certain ASEAN countries. That could happen again. So yes, closer ties to BRICS carry political risk, especially under a second Trump presidency. But that risk cuts both ways. For many Southeast Asian nations, relying too heavily on the US also carries dangers, particularly if Washington swings further toward isolationism or transactional diplomacy. And let's not forget, these countries have already shown they can withstand pressure from both sides. They're pragmatic. They've navigated decades of post-colonial politics, global crises, and trade wars. This isn't about ideology. It's about insurance. It's about diversifying risks in a volatile global economy. It's about building resilience in the face of climate change, financial instability, and great power rivalries. It's about reclaiming agency in a system that has too often treated developing nations as afterthoughts. So here's the bottom line. The rise of BRICS is not about taking sides. It's about taking control. It's about reshaping the global framework so that the global South, and Southeast Asia in particular, no longer has to choose between empire and empire. It's about giving countries room to breathe, to grow, and to chart their own futures. That's the future BRICS offers. Not allegiance, but autonomy. And as the summit in Rio unfolded, that message couldn't have been more important.